nice to see you again. Can't believe it's already like 2 weeks. Where does the time go? What happens? Where does it go? Anyways, the sun is shining, so I'm happy. And today I'm particularly happy because I've got somebody coming in. His name is Luke, and I'm really excited because actually he's coming in to talk about something that isn't sickle cell, and he's coming to raise awareness around type 1 diabetes. Luke lives with type 1 diabetes and has done for a few years. So I think it's great that he's coming in and sharing his experiences and I guess raising awareness around it. And hopefully this will sort of help us, people that don't have type 1 diabetes, to understand more for people that do have it, and raising the knowledge around it. So I think this is great that he's come in, and I'm super excited. So I'm just gonna put here a little bit of information of what type 1 diabetes is, so that we all know. Please do have a look at the links that I've signposted. Please do have a look when you get the chance. But without further ado, let's get started. So hi everyone again. As I just said earlier on, I've got a great guest here today. His name is Luke, and I'm particularly excited about having Luke here on board because he's coming in to talk about his own condition, which is different to mine. So he's the first guy coming in that doesn't have sickle cell disease, but we'll be talking about type 1 diabetes. And obviously it's a great thing to be coming in and sort of being vulnerable and talking about your own personal experiences. So first of all, thank you very much, Luke, for coming. Could you please give an introduction of yourself to everyone?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk about it and share my experience with people. And if it reaches somebody and it helps out and it helps bring awareness, then yeah, I'm really happy to help and really happy to contribute. So my name's Luke. I'm South African, living in the UK. I've been here for about 4.5 years now. And yeah, I'm a type 1 diabetic. What else can I say?
Great. So give us, I think diabetes, a lot of people think of diabetes and put it all under the same umbrella, and they're not quite sure what diabetes is. I gave a very brief overview of what it was earlier on, but from your perspective, could you just give a brief explanation of what type 1 diabetes is?
Yeah, of course. So for me, type 1 diabetes means that you have an organ in your body, which is your pancreas, which for people who aren't diabetic, when they consume food, when they consume carbohydrates and sugars, their body produces a hormone called insulin, so that when you eat those kind of foods and they convert to sugars, they sit in your bloodstream. The insulin allows your cells to absorb that sugar out of the bloodstream and use it as energy, so that you've only ever got a certain amount of sugar in your bloodstream. It's kind of like a balancing act. Your body will take care of yourself. Your body will self-regulate. It will produce that hormone insulin, so that you've always got a consistent level of sugar in your blood, which is healthy for everything. But as a type 1 diabetic, that sugar sits inside your blood, and so I've got to inject insulin to kind of duplicate what the pancreas would be doing in producing that hormone and producing that insulin, to allow my body to take that sugar out of my bloodstream and use it for other things.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good explanation. Probably much better than me, so thank you. And what age were you diagnosed?
So I was diagnosed when I was 12 years old, when I was going through adolescence or puberty, which is quite a common age for people to become type 1 diabetic. There's no real exact reason why it happens. People can be born with it. People can get it going through puberty. Any kind of extreme shock to the system or body can give you type 1 diabetes. If you're in an accident, any kind of shock, like a mental kind of stressful thing or a physical thing, can cause that organ to shut down. I know females can get it during pregnancy because, again, it's just that
Yeah.
stress on your system. But it usually happens earlier on in your life. So yeah, I was 12, had no idea what diabetes was. Um, I had all the symptoms of high blood sugar because obviously my pancreas had stopped producing sugar. So the levels of sugar in my bloodstream was really high, which are symptoms, fatigue, just
Yeah.
drain time all the time. I was urinating a lot because that's, again, a symptom of the high levels of sugar in your blood. I had an oral thrush, my mouth was really dry, and I just was completely drained, no energy whatsoever. And I kept going to a doctor. I went to a doctor 3 times and got put on 3 different courses of antibiotics over a couple of months. Never got better. My mom took me to a second doctor for another opinion, and as soon as he heard my symptoms, the very first thing he did was test my blood sugar. It was 28 or something really crazy, and said,
Wow.
"That's you're diabetic. You're going straight into hospital." I
Yeah.
had no idea what he was saying at the time. We drove home, we packed a bag, and then we went to the hospital. I got checked in straight away. My mom was in absolute tears. I was like, "Mom, what's wrong?" Because I had absolutely no clue at that age. I'd never even heard about it before. No idea what it was in any way or form.
Yeah. And had your mum heard of what it was? Did she have?
She obviously knew what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. That must have been quite a big shock to the system for your mom and even for
Mm.
yourself. Okay, and then take us through that process. I guess so. After being diagnosed, and then you were taken into hospital, and I assume that you were then given a consultant or diabetes specialist to then look after your care, your medical care.
Yeah, that was quite interesting. I was in hospital for a week. I was first put on an insulin drip. So, they would put a drip into me to kind of slowly release insulin to start bringing down my blood sugar levels. And then it was, a process of kind of learning about it and educating. I
Mm.
remember, because when you leave the hospital, you've got to inject yourself. So I had to practice injecting I think it was an orange, was the fruit that I used to practice. The skin of an orange is apparently quite similar to injecting your own skin. So I would practice doing that.
How
And
was
then
it at age 12 to do that? Was that quite scary, or you just got
I
over
was
it?
fine. A lot
Yeah.
of people said after that, when they would always ask me about diabetes, "Oh wow, how could you injecting it yourself? I could never do that." I'm like, "Well, you kind of have to, right?
Mm.
It's just part of it. Of course, you'll do it if you need to do it to survive." But I've never had a problem with needles or anything like that. When I was in hospital, I mean, another one of the symptoms of high blood sugar is dehydration
Mhm.
and also body weight. So I lost, I think, 12 kilos or something like that during those few months building up to going into the hospital. And so they struggled to find a vein to put the drip needle in, and they had to put it in 7 times, on the top and bottom of both sides of my wrist before
Horrible.
they could find a vein. And that was the most excruciating pain ever. And I
Oh,
think the
yeah.
hectic after that was just a walk in the park. It was nothing.
Yeah, you're like, I've been through it. Yeah, anything's fine now. Okay, so thank you so much. And yeah, that was really interesting to get your experience on how you were diagnosed. So I guess because there's going to be a lot of people watching this that don't really know much about diabetes, and they don't really, I guess, have a bit of a perspective on how it is living with diabetes. So
Mhm.
what are your main points? Because unfortunately we've got little time. So what are your main points that you'd want people to take away after watching this? If we can go through them, that would be great.
Cool. I've thought about this a little bit since
Yeah.
we caught up last week. Should I list them all and then go into each one, or just start,
Yeah, yeah.
jump into
I think
the
list
little.
them all and then we can go through them each. Yeah.
Cool. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the education around diabetes, which I think is super, super critical. Because if you get the right education and you treat it properly, you've got no degradation to the quality of your life. But most diabetics that I've seen, that I hear about, really don't, they haven't had the right education. They take
Mhm.
it for granted, and they end up, really suffering with those complications. And then just a few factors around symptoms of low blood sugar, high blood sugar, what can affect it, how you can deal with it, how you can be considerate and mindful around people who you might be dealing with or living with or working with who might start showing some of those symptoms, and just how to balance it all together. And then just go through the positive side of it, right? Because in everything in life, you can look at the negative or you can look at it from a
Yeah.
positive perspective, which I think is really important. So I'll talk through that. And then a little piece of technology which I started using recently, which has really helped me with my sugar control and manage my diabetes as a whole.
Great, great. This sounds really interesting. Okay, so let's go to the first one. So the first one was on education.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's with everything, right? It's so important, and like I said in my opening, with the right education, you can manage it properly, and if you can manage it properly, there's no reasons why you can't, you know, do anything that anybody else would do in life. You know, I've
Yeah.
been blessed that I've been able to travel. I've been skiing and snowboarding and scuba diving, and it's never really stopped me from doing anything in my life. Not stopped me at work, not stopped me with sport or anything. But I think I was truly lucky in that I was privileged to have the right education, so I was equipped to manage the condition properly.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like I said, it's never really. There's been a few hurdles along the way, but it's never really stopped me from living life to the fullest.
Yeah.
Um, and whilst I've got a really positive story, it's not all positive. There are some really bad stories around it. I don't know a lot of diabetics, but one diabetic friend that I've had in my life. Unfortunately, in South Africa, it's not easy to get access to good education. And if you can't afford private healthcare, like I was really lucky, that my parents were able to kind of put me on some private healthcare, and I could go to, initially you said in the hospital, was I put with a diabetic specialist? I wasn't. I was just put with the general GP and an ENT who really weren't equipped to help educate me in the right way. And I then went on to a private healthcare scheme where I went to an endocrinologist, and I had the staffing around it. I had, diabetic educators, I had dietitians, and I had the specialists who could really help me and educate me and put me on the right path to managing my sugar. But jumping back, one of the only people I really ever known that had type 1 diabetes, had to kind of struggle with the South African public healthcare, which is not that high, at a high quality. He didn't have the right education, and I would watch him, and it was so painful to watch him not take care of his sugar, eat lots of sweets, drink Coca-Cola, not really care about it. You try to explain to him, you try to send the message through, it just never went in. He ended up having complications with his liver. Then he went blind in both eyes, and then he passed away at the age of 28. Really sad story.
Yeah.
Again, with my father's best friend, was an alcoholic and was diabetic, wouldn't stop drinking beer, wouldn't take care of his sugar, lost a foot, lost his other leg, and
Yeah.
then also passed away, really before he should have. So just taking the time to educate, and I must say that the NHS is absolutely great. I think, the quality of service and education and care that you get from the NHS, which is a free service in the UK, is so phenomenal relative to what I'd grown up with, right? So yeah, I must say that.
Do you know what?
Uh,
That's really good to hear, because that whole topic of education, I think what could be quite scary for some patients is that actually there were a lot of healthcare professionals out there that didn't know much about diabetes themselves. So they present to the doctor's surgery, like you said, GP, they're not specialists in diabetes, from their perspective, they didn't really know what diabetes was. So how can they then educate a patient? So I think that's actually
exactly.
something that really needs to be, it's great to hear that you've had good experiences. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, like you said, for your friend, not everyone gets that education and gets that
Yeah.
knowledge.
I mean, I've been lucky. The two local surgeries that I've used since living in the UK, and they've had dedicated diabetic nurses there. And if there's been something that's a bit more, serious to deal with, they've referred me to the diabetes centre at Broomfield
Yeah,
Hospital. And there's a really good diabetes centre there. And they'll, they do everything at the standard that I that I was used to experiencing on the private healthcare back in South Africa. So
great.
yeah, I've been really impressed so far since being here. And I think there's just a few key things. I know, we don't have all the time, but things like diet,
Mm-hmm.
uh, understanding how to count carbohydrates, because carbohydrates all turn into sugars in your blood. Not a lot of people know that. There's
Yeah,
carbohydrates in vegetables. Green have less, but you do get very starchy vegetables. Um, rice, potato, basically everything. So it's not just refined sugar that you got to, which you should really avoid as a diabetic, because with refined sugars, there's a high glycemic index. So even if you inject insulin, there's going to be a spike in your sugar. It's going to go up and down because the insulin can't, kind of do its job as quick as that sugar spike. But even if you're eating, normal kind of starchy things, you need to be able to count how many
Yeah.
carbohydrates in your portion, or if you're eating packaged food, it'll be on the food label, and
Yeah.
you need to know how much insulin your body needs. You've got to know what your corrective dose is. So if your sugar level is high, how much insulin must I inject to bring it down to the desired level? You don't want to do too little. You don't want to do too much, because then your sugar goes low and it goes up and down, and it's a nightmare. It really just destroys your everything, your
Yeah.
motivation, your
I can
positivity,
imagine.
everything. I mean, I won't go into the whole carbohydrate thing. I try to eat less carbohydrates during my day, because it means I have to inject less. I mean, there's research out there for vegetarian, for intermittent fasting, for a carnivore diet with no carbohydrates, etc., etc. It's about finding what's the right balance for you.
Yeah.
And it's a lifestyle, right? Don't diets aren't. Now I'm going into food.
No,
Diets. You don't want to diet which is a fad which lasts for a shortened period of time, right? It's your lifestyle. It's got to be long term. It's got to be consistent. And then the other kind of education things is just knowing, like, what kind of complications are out there and what to protect. For example, your eyes are very symptomatic to complications, and your feet. So I know that I can't afford to get a scratch or a cut on my foot. If I'm outside, I must always wear good footwear, wear good shoes, don't get blisters, don't do this, don't do that, don't use public showers and things like that. Because regardless of if your sugar's good, the blood circulation's good, and there is chance to heal. But even with perfect sugars, there is a chance that you might get a scratch or a neck. Or I heard somebody whose cat scratched them on their foot and it never healed, and foot got amputated. And he was perfectly healthy, used to run marathons, perfect sugar control,
Oh,
and lost the foot
wow.
because of it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you really have to be mindful of taking care of your eyes, wear good eyewear,
Yeah.
taking care of your feet.
But you get your
And
regular
then
foot checks and your regular eye checks done as well, don't you?
yeah, so I get that done every year,
Okay.
at least every year. Go get my eyes checked, and luckily, touch wood, no early symptoms yet of any degradation. But as a diabetic, it will happen. There will get a point in time when there's I forget the word. There's a word for it, but where you start losing nerves in your feet and in your eyes.
Yeah.
But as long as your sugar level is controlled, it doesn't lead to anything more serious. And yeah, you
Great.
can take care of it.
Great, great. So yeah, so I mean that's quite a lot there that you kind of have to think about on a daily basis. You talked about checking the carbohydrates, you talked about kind of altering the insulin dose according to what you're eating, and obviously having to think about when you're going to inject, and then checking your feet and checking your eyes, and I'm sure there's other things that you're having to check. So that's a lot, isn't it, to kind of think about on a daily basis. How do you find that? Or you get used to it, maybe?
Yeah, I'm struggling to think. I mean, like I said, it's just part of the things that you have to do, right?
Mm.
If you add it all up, yeah, it's an extra 5 or 10 minutes in your day. But the amount of time and suffering that's going to save you long term, like, it's totally worth it, right? It's just
Yes.
obviously there's a massive positive, return on that little bit of investment of,
Yeah. Well, I guess it literally is like treating your body like a temple, really getting to know yourself and just looking out for yourself, which is what everyone should be doing, really, isn't it?
exactly.
Okay. So yeah, that was education. What was the second one again?
I was just going to ramble on a little bit around, just different things that can impact your sugar,
Yeah.
which, it's really hard to think of. I don't know if, this is all diabetics, but for me, I seem to be quite sensitive. So really, almost anything can change my sugar levels, be it the weather, the time of day, going on holiday, you're in a different environment, you're sleeping in a different place, as the seasons change, if my routine changes, which it does a lot. I don't
Yeah.
really live a very strict routine. So as the types of exercise I do differs, the time of day I do it differs, all of that kind of impacts your sugar control. So if you had a very prescriptive life where you woke up at the exact same time and you went to sleep at the exact same time and you ate the exact same food at the exact same time of day, everything was, like a robot, it would be easier to manage your sugar. But
Yeah.
that's not life, right?
Yeah.
And almost everything, especially things like stress, things like work. So when I get really stressed out at work, there's such a ripple effect on what that does to my sugars, and then what that does to my health, what that does to my mental well-being, what that does to my energy level. There's just this massive kind of ripple effect, which is why I'm always going to go back to that word balance. It's always about trying to find the right balance, so that nothing does go, too out of control. So for me, part of that balance is, and what works for me, it's like I said, it's the diet, it's the health, it's the mindfulness,
Yeah.
it's taking breaks, it's just having the right balance, in every aspect of your life, that can kind of help you with that control long term.
And I imagine you'd have to be very self-aware as well, because things like stress, it's quite easy for it to creep up on you. It's quite easy for you to be like, oh, I'm okay. I've got a lot of work on. And next thing you know, you realize you're really stressed and that your blood sugar levels have gone really high. So I guess self-awareness is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I naturally never had, and I've actually had to put a lot of time and effort practicing and learning, so that I could get that quality of self-awareness, which is such a good quality, again, in any aspect of life, which, it doesn't come natural to a lot of people. It never came natural to me. And the other thing that I was thinking, it's not, not feeling like you can't talk about it, like you can't be open about it, like you can't be transparent about it. Something else that I've been doing is, if I'm not feeling good, or if I'm feeling stressed, or if I'm overloaded, or work stressing me out, that's okay. It's okay, right? These things are okay. Gone are the days of, I'm a man's man, there's no problem, everything's okay. I'm never going to do crime, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to show vulnerabilities. It's okay, right? For everyone, regardless of your condition, regardless whether you don't have a condition, everybody goes through these things, everybody goes through these emotions. And again, something I've been really lucky that I work in an environment where I can be transparent. If I'm having bad time, or my sugars are bad, or I'm stressed, I just take a time out. I just take a half day off. I come back, I rejuvenate, I fix my sugars. If I wake up, my sugar's really high, I'll just message work. I'll be like, look, my sugars are really high. I'm going to sleep for a few more hours. I'll log in later. And that's okay. And it needs to be okay. You need to be able to talk about the stuff, be open about it, deal with it. Otherwise, it builds up. And then again, you end up with a long-term problem rather than that short-term, you can recover from that. But if you let it build up too much and it becomes a long-term issue, much harder to deal with and recover from.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you raised a really important point as well about your workplace being okay with it and sort of allowing you that platform and that space to be honest about your condition. I think that's so important. They need to enable it, because in the long term, it's better for both of you, isn't it? So exactly. I think that's great.
Yeah. I've always been lucky in my social circle. Again, my family made sure that they educated my social circle. So when I was hanging out with friends, they were conscious, they were aware, they'd remind me to test my sugar. If something went wrong, they would know how to deal with it. And in any workplace I've ever been in, totally considerate. I really can't imagine an environment where people wouldn't be considerate and accepting and mindful of that. I would say find another job. I've never experienced that, but again, I can't imagine people not being okay with it and considerate about it.
Yeah, I think you'd sadly be surprised, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's all about just the different factors. Everything can affect your sugars. When your sugars are affected, if your sugar goes low, you can be irritable, you can start sweating, you can start shaking. Again, I'll just, say, look, my sugar's going low, give me 10 minutes, I need to go eat some sweets. I carry sugar around me everywhere I go. I've either got Lucozade or wine gums or glucogel. So it's always in my pocket, it's always in my desk drawer, it's always next to my bed. So I can always have quick access to.
Just for people that are not quite aware, what's the reason that you carry? Because I think this is where the confusion is with diabetes, right? Because obviously you don't want the sugar to go high.
So this is actually a really good question, because I didn't really talk about it. Your sugar can go up or it can go down.
Yeah.
Now, the long-term complications come from having a consistently high sugar. It's not going to impact you straight away. And the band, again, people use different units of measures. I only know one. The good sugar level for me is, between 5 and 8, really about 6. Your sugar would probably be 5 or 6. The risk is a low sugar is 3.7 or low. So if your sugar is 5, that's perfect, but it's really quick and easy for your sugar to go low. So the short-term dangers of a low sugar, because you can go down to 3, you start shaking, you start sweating. Sugar's fuel for your brain. But as your sugar goes lower, your brain doesn't function. So if your sugar goes too low, you can't even treat yourself. because you're not thinking properly. Your brain's starved of fuel, and you can't think. Sure, but my sugar's low. I need to eat sugar.
Yeah.
And then your sugar goes to 1, and you're in a coma. So it's very dangerous short term for your sugar to go low. And that can happen if you inject too much, if you go too long without eating, or if you're doing exercise. Any kind of cardiovascular exercise will burn that sugar out your blood, and it will drop your sugar levels. So, and yeah, I get this sensation in my stomach. It's almost like this empty kind of black hole hunger. When your sugar goes low, you can eat so much, and then you probably eat too much, and then your sugar bounces up high because you just
Spiking up and down.
consumed, and it goes up and down. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So yeah, your sugar can go high, and you only really start feeling symptoms in the high teens, 15, 16 up. And again, that's the symptoms I said earlier. You fatigue, dry mouth, you'll urinate a lot, you'll be really thirsty.
Yeah.
And the complications that come later on in life is from having a consistently high blood sugar.
Yeah.
You really, it's a balancing act. You got to keep it in the middle. If you don't inject enough, it goes up. If you inject too much, it goes down.
Yeah, exactly. That, do you know what? That was such a good explanation. I feel like you need to go and train healthcare professionals on this kind of stuff. That was really good. Yeah.
And then I really just want to talk about the positive side of it, because it can be looked at negative. And I don't think it's easy to look at a chronic illness, a lifetime illness, and see it as a positive. But I really try to do so. And more recently, when people see me and they go, "Oh, you're diabetic, shame, that sucks, it must be so difficult," I say, well, no, I see it as a blessing in disguise. I consider myself the healthiest person in my family.
Yeah.
I've got a great balance in my life. Like I said, I'm disciplined. I'm prepared. If I'm going away, if I'm traveling, I'm like, right, where are we going to eat? What's the facilities? I carry stuff with me all the time, everywhere I go. And I think because I've been forced to focus on the health side of it, I've ended up with a much more healthy lifestyle than I might have had I not been diagnosed with diabetes. So I just focus on that. And yeah, I think, like I said, in everything in life, if you focus on the positive and you make the best of it, we all get dealt different hands. It's how you play the hand you get dealt, right?
Yeah, I think that's great. I love that. I love that mindset. And obviously, so like you said, not only has it made you healthier physically, but I think it's probably made you sort of stronger mentally as well. So it sounds like it's had a lot of benefits.
Look, it wasn't easy. I went through a lot of other health conditions, which we won't go into, but diabetes was one of an array of things that I dealt with in my childhood and through my teenage years. But coming out of all of that, like you said, I think I'm much better prepared for any other kind of challenges in life because of having to go through all of that and deal with it.
That's great. Well, great. Nice to see the positives. And I think the last point was on Freestyle Libre. Is that right?
Oh yeah, so that's I work in technology. I work in an IT company. I'm all for there's this whole movement called Tech for Good, which is technology for good that makes people's lives better. It's something that I'm a little bit passionate about. The industry I work in is cybersecurity, so that's definitely Tech for Good. And I'm contributing to other kind of Tech for Good platforms. And I thought it'd be really nice to mention this thing that I wear on my arm, which normally to test your blood sugar, you would have to draw blood.
Yeah.
So you take your finger, you draw blood, you put it on a little strip. It would take a couple of seconds, and it shows you exactly what your blood sugar is at that point in time. But obviously, it's quite a thing to do. It's quite a schlep. You end up with little pokes all over both sides of all your fingers on both hands. And it's not easy and convenient to do. So you would normally do it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If your sugar felt really bad, you would do it. But I was probably testing about 4 or 5 times a day. And you don't know what's happening in between. You know what your blood sugar is at that point in time.
Yeah.
But if you go to bed at night and you wake up in the morning, it could be the same, but you have no idea what it's done in between.
Yeah.
So Freestyle Libre doesn't draw the sugar from your blood. It's a filament that goes into your skin. It lasts 2 weeks, and it takes the sugar from some kind of sediment just underneath the skin, not from the blood. And what I do is I check my phone. I hope my sugar is good for the demo. I scan it using NFC.
This is great. Oh my God, look at that. We got the demo.
The coolest thing about it is, you can kind of scan, use the NFC, you can see what your sugar level is, but you can see what it's been doing in between. So if, for example, your sugar is 6, when you would test your blood and see that your sugar is 6, you would think, oh, it's great, but you won't actually know which direction it's traveling in.
Yeah.
But using the Freestyle Libre, you can see that actually it's 6, but it's trending down because it was higher and it's on its way down. Even though it looks good, you can actually now see with that extra information that you still do need to eat, a little bit of sugar or something like that, so it doesn't keep dropping. So really, you can see the trend, you can see what it's been doing over 24 hours, you can see which direction your sugar is going in, and it's just so easy to be able to take your phone, scan your arm. You can test 10, 20, 30 times a day without too much effort, versus having to prick your finger, draw blood, put it on a machine.
That must be life-changing as well. I can imagine a lot of kids, for example, that must be life-changing to be able to do that. And does
I think this is...
Sorry,
I was just going to say, I think this is the first thing that's actually helped me improve my sugar control in a long time. Because whilst I was really blessed to get all that education, there's not that much that's changed in the last 10, 15 years. So no one's really telling me anything that I don't already know. This is the very first thing that's literally been a life changer, been a game changer in terms of how I can control and manage my sugar. So really, really lucky again. I had to self-fund it for a while, prove that it helped my sugar. It brought down my HbA1c, which is your measure of your average sugar over the last 3 months. And then I was lucky. The NHS has been rolling it out slowly because it's a really, really costly device to have. And to self-fund it, the one patch lasts 2 weeks, and it was £105 for 2 patches. So it was £105 a month, which is really expensive. But having self-funded it for 6 months to prove that it really does help my sugar, and when it was exposed so that you can get it on prescription. Not everybody can. You kind of have to validate it. You have to have certain conditions, which I met, along with the fact that I self-funded it and showed that it helped improve my sugar. I was really lucky to eventually get it on my prescription. An absolute game changer and a great example of technology for good.
Yeah, no, this is great, and I hope that more and more people will be able to get it. We'll be able to get it for free under the NHS, because it's making so many. If you look at the long-term impact, because obviously we know that if you have diabetes, that's not managed very well, you get more complications, which will have more cost to the NHS in the long term. So actually, cost effectively, it's good. It's a great technology, isn't it?
Exactly. That's all under the whole preventative thing, right? If we can prevent things from happening, so much cheaper and better for everyone to then actually dealing with it after it's happened.
Yeah, more and more people will have access to this technology. Luke, that was really interesting. Like, I learned so much, obviously, as someone that doesn't have diabetes, but also as a pharmacist. You've taught me so much. So thank you so much again for coming.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Adam.
Bye. So that was Luke, and as I said just then, wow, he knows so much. I think education is key, and he clearly has sort of really educated himself a lot on type 1 diabetes and how it impacts him. And I think obviously him understanding his body over the years has really helped him manage his condition. So it's really great and positive to see how, I guess he's just a really good example of how you can utilize maybe what could have been potentially a very difficult situation and use it for the good as well. So that was really positive, and I found that really inspiring. I hope that you all found that inspiring as well, and that you learned a lot about diabetes type 1 specifically.